And when you're working with somebody who's, say, tried this on their own beforehand, what are the biggest dietary mistakes you see?
Assuming they are someone who needs a modified ketogenic diet or a modified ketogenic metabolic therapy, specifically to get their ketones up and keep them up to get treatment effects. The two things that happen often is they look at their whole day macros and they eat from that as they go. So that shouldn't be a problem, but for someone with a sensitive brain, or insulin resistance, sitting down and saving your 20 net grams of carbs all for dinner at one meal is going to spike insulin and drop ketone levels. And so someone's bringing me coffee. And so if they do that, that's going to shut down that energy supply, right? And if your brain is sensitive and it cannot handle that starvation of energy for 2 to 3 hours while we're waiting for your insulin levels to drop, that's a problem. And so breaking up those 20 net grams of carbs into about 6 or 7 per meal is going to make all the difference. And the other thing people often do is they do not moderate their protein per meal. And so if they are having good quality animal proteins in their meals, those are high in certain amino acids that will spike an insulin response, which they should, right? They're building, they're trying to build muscle, methionine and leucine. And so for people who do need consistent ketone energy, we modulate protein into a range that maintains muscle mass, and you can even build muscle with. But if the focus is on treating mental illness with KMT, you really might need to modulate that protein per meal. And that's kind of those are my secrets right there. Like, people come to me, 80% of the people who come to me are already on a ketogenic diet, but they're not getting treatment effects yet. And those are just some of the few things that I do that make the biggest difference for them.
Okay, this is really good. I want to go deeper into this. Somebody who is, say, lowering the carbs, and they're at the point where they're having, say, a ribeye and a salad for their lunch. They're eating in an eating window of, say, 6 hours. So they're having 2 meals, but they're having something like I just said, where it's a salad and a steak. So they're getting a lot of protein twice a day, but they still want to be within, say, that 6-hour eating window. Is that possible, eating the way you're talking about? Because I just want to be really practical for the person that is eating low carb, but they are relying on, say, a steak at lunch to feel full till dinner. So if they cut that down to the protein you talked about, what else can they put in there to feel full and then get these higher ketone levels?
For many, many people, that is just a beautiful, fine way to eat. Some people actually, I'll do their diet and I'll break it up into 3 meals a day so that the protein per meal is more moderate. And we do that for a little while, and then they find that when they intermittent fast, their ketone levels actually go up better. And so there's so much bio individuality with this and figuring this out. But yes, so if I was working with someone who we suspected needed to modulate protein or moderate protein per meal, then it would probably be, half that ribeye steak. They're welcome to have that beautiful salad. We would have them eat some pats of butter each bite with that steak to increase the fat. And we would make sure they had a beautiful, lovely, maybe olive oil dressing and not skimp on it.
Given the nuance here and how everybody's different, you mentioned bio-individuality. How important is testing if you're working with somebody, their ketone levels?
If it's to the point where they've come to me to fine-tune it, testing is actually very important because it's a data point that I need in order to understand whether they do need to moderate their protein per meal, or if they might benefit from an intermittent fast or a slightly longer fast, or are they coming into their ketogenic diet with certain insufficiencies or deficiencies? So, for example, carnitine is something that we really look at when we're doing diets for this purpose. Somebody coming into their ketogenic diet that's vegan or vegetarian may need to rely much more on exogenous ketone supplementation like MCT oil, for example, because they are insufficient in carnitine or have trouble getting enough carnitine. Or maybe we need to supplement them carnitine because, again, if you don't have carnitine, you can't shuttle that fatty acid that you just ate or burned off your body into the mitochondrial membrane to make a ketone body. And if you're trying to fuel your brain on ketones, then you're in trouble, right? So, potentially. So those are just some different nuances.
Okay, let's stick on carnitine. This is something I wanted to, again, make sure we got into. If somebody is eating an animal-based diet, is that deficiency ever something that comes up when you're working with people?
You know, I've been doing this for many years now, and there's always this discussion that if, you know, the longer your keto, the lower your blood ketone levels will be, and that's just normal because all of your tissues are sucking those ketones up and utilizing them better. And yes, that's true, but there's also a danger in not thinking a little bit more deeply about that. So people can become carnitine deficient. It's called hypocarnitinemia. It's a mouthful. And there's actually some published literature in it in the epilepsy world. And they found that adults using a modified Atkins diet, so a modified Atkins diet isn't even about adding extra fat, right, to use up all the carnitine. It's just a therapeutic carbohydrate restriction sort of formulation. They can show up with hypocarnitinemia in as little as 1 to 3 months, right? So if someone is on a long-term low-carb ketogenic diet and their ketones start to get anemic, just kind of inconsistent or a bit flat or consistently low, I really do think it is important for them to go to their doctor and say, I am on a low-carb diet, and part of medically monitoring adults on a low-carb diet or a ketogenic diet is a carnitine panel. And if they come back and their free carnitine is 25 or less, they've got hypocarnitinemia, and in the epilepsy world, they actually supplement that. And I think that's important because carnitine insufficiency and deficiency has long kind of downstream chronic health implications. And so I think that our low-carb communities that mostly do this for things like weight loss and that sort of thing have kind of missed the boat about getting that information from the epilepsy world because they don't feel well. They'll say like, oh, my ketones went down and, you know, I'm starting to get symptoms again, or I don't feel well, or I'm tired. Fatigue is a big deal for low carnitine. And so I just think it's such an easy thing to supplement prophylactically or to just monitor with a doctor if you get labs anyways. And I just think it's kind of it's underutilized.
Okay, it sounds like it, but you're comfortable with somebody including that supplement just in general? It sounds like there's no harm in doing that. And if so, what dose?
Well, and here's the thing. So my field is mental health. And so there actually is, for people with bipolar disorder, there are, I think, 2 or 3 case reports that talk about people having, or they're wondering about the connection because case reports are not causal, right? We don't assume. But there was a very strong wondering about whether carnitine supplementation caused a potential manic episode. Now, none of those individuals were already on ketogenic diets where they obviously made ketones, right? So there could have been a disrupted metabolic system going on already that made worse somehow. I don't know. But so I wouldn't, if you have serious mental illness and you are not on a ketogenic diet and you are not carefully working with a dietitian who knows how to supplement carnitine and a psychiatrist and a provider, all that good stuff, I wouldn't just willy-nilly start supplementing carnitine. There might be no association truly at all, and it's just been, it's just been put together in the by practitioners trying to make connections for why manic episodes occurred, or there could be something to investigate there. So I wouldn't just do it I wouldn't just go for it, right? So, but for people who are not using ketogenic diets as a treatment for mental illness, it is something that they can start to supplement. And what they'll find is, they can take some l-carnitine with a meal and they might actually see their ketones improve pretty quickly. So within hours or just a day or so.
That's what I was going to ask. Any examples? You're working with somebody, they feel like they're doing the ketogenic diet right, but their ketones just aren't going up. They come to see you, you include this supplement, and then they just bump right up?
Happens all the time.
What kind of dose would somebody want to include?
Well, I wouldn't want to go into doses on a podcast type of thing, but I know that I can say that I know in the space lots of low carb people, and many of them who are on long-term ketogenic diets, they will just do 500 milligrams every day, just prophylactically, to just try to keep those levels up overall.
Okay, just to be clear, somebody on an animal-based diet, and the way I understand it, red meat is the highest or one of the highest sources of carnitine. Mm-hmm. So if they're having a steak every day or every other day as part of that ketogenic diet, and they're getting that carnitine through the diet, over time they can still deplete and need supplementation.
Yes.
Okay, really important we go there, because if you did the search online and saw the carnitine availability in a steak, you would assume, okay, there's no way I'm going to run out.
Yeah.
For somebody that does, how long does that usually take?
Well, I don't know, because your body actually does put together some of its own carnitine on an as-needed basis from other amino acids. And I think that there is differences. Maybe it's in genetics, or there's personal differences in how well our body does that and to what level of abundance. And so I think that if we just look at the research literature that shows it can happen in as little as 1 to 3 months, right? Then we just it's just something we need to pay attention to.
Coming back to our protein and the importance of spreading that out if you're finding you're not getting deep into ketosis, for me, that brings up the carnivore diet and people that are having these heavy meat diets. Do you find that people in that case working with you, some of them can get deep into ketosis with all that protein?
They do. I have people in my online program, for example, where they can have 45 grams, 50 grams of protein in a meal, and their ketones drop, but they don't drop too terribly, and they're back popped up in just an hour or two, and they do just fine. And then I have people where if I give them over 30 grams of protein per meal, their ketone production stops or gets very low, and they have symptoms. And so, like I said, it's just so different for everybody.
If you're working with somebody and their mental health's improving, they're keto, they're producing good ketones, but they're worried about long-term ketosis, do you feel that somebody on this diet for mental health has any reason to spike insulin periodically to maintain a healthy metabolism?
I don't. I will say, though, that anyone who does a ketogenic diet long term, there's just going to be instances where you're out of ketosis and your insulin got spiked anyways, either by accident or, that sort of thing. So there's people who've done ketogenic diets for their whole lives for epilepsy from childhood on, that have been healthy and have not needed to spike their insulin, although I bet it's happened from time to time. And also, people go out of ketosis sometimes when they're sick, right? So when people are ill, sometimes the body will upregulate glucose as a fuel for immune cells, and they'll drop out of ketosis. And if they've got epilepsy, they'll have a seizure. And if they have mental illness, they might have some extra symptoms. So there's this idea that you stay in one metabolic state all the time through your whole life is just not how human bodies work. So yeah, I work with people also who have neurological conditions, and many of them have weight loss and that sort of thing. And you can absolutely formulate a ketogenic diet that keeps them from losing weight. Insulin doesn't have to be spiked. You make sure they have good amino acids, or you sometimes will supplement amino acids, right? If they need to be on a higher ratio. So there's all kinds of things that we can do. But I've been on a ketogenic diet for 8 or 9 years now, and there has been moments where I've had extra berries that I'm sure was, an out of control insulin spike, but I'm still on a ketogenic diet overall. So again, this kind of black and white thinking I don't think is really reflective of real life.
You made it to the end of this clip, which means you're gonna love the full episode. Head on over here to watch, and I'll see you over there.
Sometimes you don't realize how poorly functioning you are until you fix it. There are areas of hypometabolism that occur in mental illness. So if I've got parts of my brain